It's the greatest podcast in the history of the world.
Mira comes charging out! Oh! This is enormous from Dave!
And, there you go. I'll give you the headset here, Sue, if you want to come up and join us.
All thanks to MECWACARE, a proud partner of the VAFA.
He runs around, he goes for goal! He does it!
What a goal from Tilly!
This is for the love of the game.
No, you keep at it, mate. Keep at it. There's a job for you somewhere.
The umpire's just given away a free kick, so hopefully this breaks up the game a bit.
Here's your host, Joey Pignataro.
Turn the mic on.
Hello everyone and welcome to For the Love of the Game, the official podcast of the Amos. Round 16 is in the book. We've got a couple of weeks to go in William Buck Premier Men's. We're into the final round for Premier C, and in the divisions season wrapped up. We've also got some grand finals. All of that to come on For the Love of the Game. Joe Pignataro is my name. We're here all thanks to MECWACARE. Jason Bennett and Paddy Grindlay are here. Lads, hello and welcome to you both.
Joseph.
I think I made the greatest call in For the Love of the Game history last week.
Another one.
I've never been more accurate than Zavs being embarrassed out the snake pit. They were pants, Jace.
I don't know if you're anyone who's a fan of Friends. That famous episode where Ross is moving the couch up the stairs and it's
pivot.
like pivot. I just saw a contortionist act similar to that when Joey was trying to get his head in through the door here to record the pod today. He sort of had to pivot himself through the door. Well, you'd be feeling very, very good about things, wouldn't you?
Last year in September, we coined Simon Petch the accurate one because, of course, he butchered Uni Blues in the grand final. I think I'm going to take the name because I was spot on last week. Jackson Haitley came back and had St Bernard's side, and I was champing at the bit, Jace.
Oh, there was a very early text on Saturday morning, wasn't there, from our man Joey, Jace, where Jackson Haitley did get the call up, and from that moment onwards, I think the head's inflated, and it's still inflating as we speak.
Let's run through the results to begin with from round 17, the penultimate round of Premier Men's. Let's start there, Joseph.
18-12, 120. St Bernard's defeated the Old Zavarians 10-17, 77. Bad kick is bad football. Just ask any coach at any level, they'll tell you that.
Best performance you've seen from St Bernard's this year? 43-point win over the fourth-ranked side?
It's right up there with the University Blues game that we saw earlier on in the year, but this probably takes the table. Given the prominence of where the Old Zavarians are, to have them now in a vulnerable spot in the four, which we'll go through in a moment. Shortly, Julian Turner's going to join us. Fitzroy, 13-12-90, have beaten the University Blues 11-9-75. The old Brighton boys have just about sewn up top spot, I reckon, Jace.
Yep.
14-24, though, 108 to 10-3-63 over Collegians. Old Scotch had to come from behind in this game against the Old Melburnians to win by 28 points. And somewhat of a shock, but again, I want to unpack this a little bit with you blokes. University Blacks, 7-point winners over St Kevin's.
So the amazing part about that is 3 of the bottom 4 teams won on the weekend. So in terms of the relegation race, it just put a whole new twist into things. And obviously the top 4 is starting to look a little more settled, but not completely because we've had a change in the top 2. Suddenly Old Scotch are in the double chance position.
Can we please start with the bottom of the table and work our way up? Because I just had a very quick look. And again, Julian Turner going to join us shortly. There's a strong chance that outside of the Old Melburnians with the next fortnight, from 6th down to 9th, that's Blues, Blacks, St Bernard's and Fitzroy, they could potentially all finish with 6 wins. And percentage could be the reason a team is relegated this year.
It's an incredibly even bottom end of the ladder. In terms of Premier Men's, where does this sit in terms of the evenness of a relegation race and your historical knowledge of the competition?
To have the teams in contention up to 6th, I think only the most pessimistic of Old Zavarians person last year thought that would be a case, but I've never seen it get to 6th. At this point of the year, to have this many. We've always regularly had 8th and 9th fighting. Sometimes we've had 8th, 9th and 10th fighting. But in the last decade, we've never gone as high as 6th. To be 2 weeks out from the season finishing and have these amount of teams in contention of being relegated.
Must have been a roller coaster of emotions for all those teams in the relegation race on Saturday, because you play your game, you get a fantastic win, you come off the ground and go, and then you look at the teams around you go, oh, they all won as well.
That's where I feel for Fitzroy and St Bernard's, right? Because you get these, like Fitzroy's win over Uni Blues with James Stewart in the side. That's a fantastic achievement. St Bernard's win at the Snake Pit, and then you look around and the Blacks have got up over St Kevin's as well.
Can I tell you, Paddy, I was out at GMHBA Stadium working Geelong and West Coast, looking at the St Bernard's score going, oh, how good's this? Yeah. I've got one right finally after 16 weeks of throwing darts at the board. And then I hear your game, Paddy. You're at University Blacks and St Kevin's, and Blacks keep hanging around and they hit the front. And then I see Fitzroy and one another. Bloody hell. They're still not out of relegation, St Bernard's.
And what important win all of a sudden it became, right?
Oh.
Because if you take those 4 points away, look where you are.
Yeah.
Right, you're right there sitting in ninth spot alongside Fitzroy. So it's going to be fascinating with 2 rounds to go. In a moment, we'll unpack who plays who out of that relegation race. But it is going all the way to the wire, as we kind of hoped as neutrals that it would.
Yeah, it does feel that way. The University Blacks were really impressive, Joey. When you consider that St Kevin's brought back Anthony Seaton and Andrew Matheson, and I understand Tommy Jock was out of the side due to suspension, it's a very, very strong Scob side. So to get over the top of the Scobbers, if you're a Blacks person, it's a huge result, and they had to play 4 quarters of footy. This game wasn't over until the final 10 minutes. You should have seen the terraces, the amount of premiership reunions that were going on. Everyone had finished up. Simon Petch's singing syrup that he coined had finished up for the day. They all piled out and were cheering on their team to finish up.
It was some great radio, and your interview of Ray Wilson at halftime was fantastic on SEN. It was wonderful.
He's a wonderful chat, Ray, but I think what I need to do is direct everyone to especially the 4th quarter of the replay of this game between the University Blacks and St Kevin's, because away Macking has taken another mark of the year contender. He is just a complete freak to watch. He started the game down back. He went into the ruck. He hurt himself. He looked done for the day. Goes up forward, takes a sort of, think Jack Rewalt 2021 against Adelaide.
Big high chest mark in the goal
back
square.
with the flight, knee
Brilliant
into the
mark.
chest of an opponent, kicked the goal. So an incredible game of footy and an incredible result for the University Blacks.
So is he going to beat himself when it comes to the mark of the year? He's already got a contender.
He's probably contending with away macking, and away macking. So he's going to have, you'd think, a fair shot at mark of the year. Whoever's putting together his highlights tape from this season is going to have a really tough job.
Well, they just ring you. You've already cut them all up.
Remarkable athlete.
Exactly right. So let's go through the bottom 4, really, 5 that are still in the relegation race. So right now, Melbourne Burnings have dropped to the bottom. They're 14 points, 75.3. They're half a game behind Fitzroy, who's at 16 points, 72.1. Then a full game to St Bernard's plus percentage. So St Bernard's at the moment are 1 game plus 17%, which sounds comfortable, but let's talk about the run home in just a moment. Another game ahead is University Blacks at 6. So at the moment, there's 7% between Blacks and Fitzroy. So Blacks and Blues obviously have that extra game of safety up their sleeve. So at the moment, really, it's between Bernard's at 20 and then Fitzroy 16 and Old Melbournians at 12. But let's go through it. So Old Melbournians sit at 14 points rather. They're half a game back. They play Uni Blues this week and then they finish with St Bernard's. And that's the key. The fact that, okay, they've got to pick up a game and a half on St Bernard's, but if they beat St Bernard's in the final round, suddenly they only have to pick up half a game. If they beat University Blues and St Bernard's don't win either of their last 2, they skip them.
I'm going to give them a tick this week against the University Blues. That's a little precursor to our tips a bit later on. I'm tipping that the Old Melbournians win this game just to make it even more fascinating in round 18.
So if Bernard's lose and they play, St Bernard's play St Kevin's this week at TH
real
King.
tough game. Now,
that becomes a relegation elimination final in the final round.
It certainly does, and that's going to be an absolute killer diller. Now, I don't want to go away from what we're doing here, but I do want to flag that I want to ask you about the St Kevin's backline and the way they're structuring up at the moment, because I've seen, obviously, as you just said, the University Blacks came from behind to beat them and hold on by a goal, but massive game for St Kevin's when it comes to the top 4 side of things. So I think they're going to beat St Bernard's at the TH King this week if they want to keep their premiership chances alive, Jace.
Well, that's it. We'll get to the finals top 4 in just a moment. So we've got Fitzroy, who have just beaten the Blues at Brunswick Street. Now they play the Blacks at Brunswick Street this week. And then they finish with Collegians at Harry Trott. Now, we're not sure at the moment. Collegians are still in the mix for the finals. They've still got everything to play for. And they will be, even if they lose this week and Zabs happen to win. We'll get to that in just a moment. So that's what Fitzroy have got. Blacks at Brunswick Street, Collegians at Harry Trott. Obviously, if Blacks win this week, they're safe. They're in the safety zone. But if they lose, Fitzroy then jump to 20 points and they're within a game of striking the Blacks in the final round. So that in itself becomes sort of a soft elimination final of sorts. If Blacks win it, they're safe and they'll stay up. But if they lose, they get drawn back into the race once again.
It's a massive game for the Blacks in the sense that if they are going to drop this, they have to be really conscious of the margin, because you look at a situation if Fitzroy managed to pull them back a little bit, and we're looking at a situation where they've got a 1-game advantage, but at the moment the percentage gap is 7.3. If that starts to close in last round of the season, we're looking at about 3-4%. Much more difficult. So if you're the Blacks, if you can't win this game, you have to keep it close. You have to get close. So I would say anything outside with I suppose a line of sorts, if they're going to lose this game, they can't let it blow up beyond 3 goals.
Let me put this to you, that if Collegians drop this game, they won't make the finals. And they go into the last game, which is against Fitzroy.
Yep.
checked out on the year because potentially the Old Zaverians could lock in a fourth spot this week if they're to have an upset win. Now, there's a couple of really big games this weekend, but Collegians outs. There are 15 players from their premiership team last year who are not on the park. There are a couple of fringe players who are just hanging on to a spot, and overall there's about 30 unavailable. So if they drop a game this weekend and the Old Zaverians win or potentially lose but don't lose damagingly, their percentage might be enough, the Old Zaverians, that they go into the last round and hang on to fourth.
Maybe, but the thing is, Zabs have got Old Brighton and Old Scotch to finish. Their last two rounds are against the top two teams in the competition. So I would feel that even if Collegians lose this week and Zabs win and go a game clear, I still think Collegians go into that final round alive because they'll look at it and go, you know what, if Scotch do a number on Zabs and we do a number on Fitzroy, the percentages can swing.
And then they've got to factor in, do they play a semi-final of some sort that's a knockout against their biggest rival who could pull their pants down if they don't get any of those players back?
Just want to make a little call here. I don't think the Zabs or Collegians will win another game for the home and away season.
So you think Collegians lose to Fitzroy in the final
I find it
round?
hard to disagree with you on that.
I think that Fitzroy game, it does seem to appear that if Fitzroy are going to beat, and we'll speak to Julian Tenner in a moment about this, if they can figure out the Blacks at Brunswick Street Oval and they play Collegians, as you mentioned, with all the players out, needing to win to stay in Premier, this is their first ever year in Premier, it's really hard to tip against the Roy boys in that last game of the season. And the Zavs, I don't buy them against Old Brighton at Brighton Beach Oval. And having seen a lot of Old Scotch this year, we were Scotch radio for a few weeks
still
there.
are. We're going to do it in September.
I don't think there's many teams in the competition who can beat them at Camberwell Sports Ground, and I certainly don't think the Zaverians are one of those.
So St Bernard's at the moment sit a game clear of Fitzroy plus 17%. So for Fitzroy or Old Melburnians, they're going to have to beat them on points. It's not percentage is not going to be a factor, but they play St Kevin's this week, St Bernard's away, and then they face Old Melburnians at the Snake Pit. And so as we've talked about from the Old Melburnians, that could be a relegation decider. And then as we've said about Blacks, if Blacks can get the job done in either of the weeks, you think they've just got to win one of their last two and they're right. But gee, I tell you what, it's really still very much alive down the bottom end of the ladder.
I think that St Bernard's Old Melburnians game will probably decide it, you'd think, considering.
And that'll be an SEN game as well.
What about the University Blues?
He's a genius, that bloke.
What about the University Blues? He is a genius, by the way, the schedule. He's pulled together real well.
Very handsome too, I believe.
Part of the season after he stopped taking payments out of
Bartholomew Bennett. Going.
How many payments you received from Scotch Radio earlier on in the year, scheduler?
Just doing my job, Joseph.
A lot of Scotch Radio.
Lygon Street
early
stuff.
on. University Blues are not safe.
Yeah, I know. They've got the
They've actually got a less percentage than St Bernard's.
They do, but the amount of results that would have to go against the Blues and the Blacks for them to go down, because you've got to remember that they've got that little buffer to the Blacks as well.
Who are they playing this weekend,
Old
James?
Melburnians at Melbourne Uni and Uni Blacks at Melbourne Uni. So they're their last two games. So two teams that are below them on the ladder, win one of those and they're safe, but the same sort of goes for Blacks as well. So you could potentially get down to that final round game between Blues and Blacks, and the loser could be at risk.
Which has happened before with these two teams. I think it might have been 2013 or 14. They played off in a relegation game. And it was probably the most attended game. And these two sides have played in a couple of grand finals over the last couple of years. One of the most attended games at the Melbourne Uni Oval you'll see.
I just looked at Eddie Zebath is back. James Stewart is back for the Blues.
Oh, he's back.
I think they're going to win at least one of these games. I think especially having Zebath back as Stewart, I think they win not this week, sorry. I think they win the last game of the season against the Blacks.
Against the Blacks. Yep.
So let's turn our attention to the top of the ladder and we'll work from the top down. So right now, Old Brighton are 2 games plus 9% clear with 2 rounds to play. So you would think, and they play Old Zaverians this week at Brighton, they finish with St Kevin's at Brighton. So despite them being 2 potentially challenging games, it would take a bit of a mini disaster for Old Brighton not to finish top.
Yep.
And to be fair, they've been the pace setters all season long. So, for them to be sitting at 14-2 and finish as your minor premiers, they would be worthy minor premiers. So the big move in the top 4, obviously, over the weekend was Old Scotch winning and St Kevin's losing. So Old Scotch have now jumped up to 48 points. They're half a game clear of St Kevin's, so percentage between those two doesn't matter. Here's what they have in the final 2 rounds. Old Scotch will play Collegians at Camberwell and Old Zabs at Camberwell. They'll start favourites in both of those games. St Kevin's play St Bernard's at home at TH King and then Old Brighton at Brighton Beach Oval. Now, St Kevin's at the moment are 10 points clear of Zabs, so they can't go any lower than third. But you would think, Joey, is the top 3 going to finish the way it is right now? Old Brighton first, Old Scotch second, St Kevin's third?
Yes. On the back of the runs that are coming up, even if St Kevin's are to win both of them, I can't see Scotch losing their 2 games. So I think Scotch will finish in the top 2 and face Brighton, which would be a cracking first final.
Which would then drop St Kevin's down into the cutthroat first semi-final to play either Old Zabs and Collegians. Now, right now, Zabs are 36 points, 115.6. Collegians 36 points, 109.2. So there's 6.4% between the two of them. Here's what they have in their final 2 rounds. Zabs face Old Brighton and Old Scotch. Doesn't get tougher. Collegians face Old Scotch and Fitzroy. So the question then becomes, if Zabs were to drop the last 2 games against the top 2 teams in the competition, which right now you would think is the most likely outcome, can Collegians close that gap of 6.4% with a big win over Fitzroy and either a win over Old Scotch or a narrow loss?
Yeah, I think it's going to come back to a game that we called in round 3 of the season where Collegians managed to scrape a win off Old Scotch with 4 goals in the last quarter.
Yeah, after Scotch had the chance to put it to bed.
In a really low-scoring, pretty average-to-watch game of football. They won it by 3 points. I think that might end up being the difference. This is a crazy...
So you think Collegians can get over Zabs and finish 4th?
I think Fitzroy will win that last game of the season against Collegians. I think neither of these teams win another game. Personally, I just think that Fitzroy will get up for it. But Collegians have, I think, the better run going home. That Fitzroy game, if it is the all-important game they need to win to play finals, you feel a bit more confident about the Lions.
So the beauty of all of this is literally all 10 teams in the competition are in a race in the final 2 weeks of the season. Now, before we move on from Premier Men's and start to talk Fitzroy with Julian Turner, who's going to join us in a moment, you wanted to talk St Kevin's.
Yes, but just before we do, is it conceivable, because I tend to agree with Paddy, I can't see either team winning, but is it conceivable the Odds Variants get belted in both games? A percentage for Collegians could go up the ladder without winning.
Absolutely, they could.
It's a 6.3%?
6.4% roughly.
Yep.
And yes, that is absolutely conceivable. And so that's why
that would be heartbreaking for the Odds Variants in the worst possible way, that you actually miss the finals and the team that replaces you hasn't won either.
Yeah, that's right. So if Collegians would have 2 narrow losses and Zabs had a couple, well, even one heavy loss is enough to, swing percentage. So it is entirely possible.
And we've seen the Odds Variants go the other way. I was just mentioning that Collegians game. That win over the Uni Blues where they ran up the score and won by 99 points might have locked them in finals, considering how we expect this to play out, Joey.
Correct.
I've got something for you on St Kevin's, but I'll let you start us off, considering that you've wanted to talk about it for the last 10 minutes.
Well, I just want to go back from round 12, which was the game against the University Blues. Unfortunately, the horrific injury to Michael Pisker, and still, as we have said, week on week, our thoughts continue with him, and you can go to the GoFundMe page. There's regular updates from his mum,
and
Alexandra.
he continues to make great progress, which is fantastic.
Fantastic. But I just, from an on-field perspective, which I did mention a couple of weeks ago, how important he is to the back 6. They kicked 48 points on that particular day. A week later, they drew with the old Melburnians, again, kicking the same score. They were able to account for Fitzroy relatively.
That's how draws normally work, yeah.
Thank you. But 48 points again was the score, the total score. Old Scotch, they were held to 51 points, and on the weekend, 66. They've got Paddy Kerr at the front half who does great stuff, but I'm just wondering at the other end of the ground where their defence is holding up, because a lot of their forward surges will come from their back 6. And him not being there, I know you mentioned Anthony Seaton and Cal Matheson back in the team on the weekend. Was there enough drive coming from there?
It was a strange game of footy because it became apparent very early in the piece, and we heard this from Dale Bauer during the quarter-time huddle, is that the University Blacks were intent on taking away handball, receive and corridor from St Kevin's. They know, like every other team in the competition, how dangerous the Scobbers are when they get to cut through the guts and go direct to Paddy Kerr. I was really interested in the marks battle. So the last time they played the Blacks, they took 119 marks, 20 of them inside 50, 96 uncontested. And when that happens, St Kevin's are able to get speed on the ball, they're able to make the right choices, and they're able to just sort of rack up those possessions and work the ball into their best users. On the weekend, they only took 70 marks, which is their second lowest of the season. They took 55 uncontested marks, lowest of the season. They did take 15 marks inside 50, though, so they're still so dangerous going forward of the football. But I was really impressed by the Blacks' ability to take the ball off their hands and to force them into this really sort of like high-intensity, scrubby game of footy. The amount of times Liam Gunson found space over the top on the wing, and they just couldn't work through the layers to get the ball there because of the Blacks' pressure and because they probably pushed up a little bit high their defence to force the ball down, Really interesting game of footy this. So
Steve Alessio will have been watching that. St Bernard's will be practicing that this week.
I reckon there'll be a few teams who'll be watching this game just for the blueprint a little bit. So we've got to put our hands up for the University Blacks here first before we go into St Kevin's properly, because it's the best I've seen them look all year. It was a clear plan they were trying to execute by taking away St Kevin's space. They did so. They win the game by 7 points.
Second year in a row, Blacks are finishing with a wet sail.
And it's a second year in a row they've beaten St Kevin's in a very similar fashion. And I know last year, I think they might have kicked something like 4 goals 20 or something, St Kevin's on that day. On the weekend, 9 goals 12. They can let themselves down in front of goal when they've got momentum on their side, Paddy. Sometimes the opportunities, they leave them on the table.
It did feel a bit that way, and they dominated inside 50. So they had a plus 15 inside 50 differential, which you would say for a team with Paddy Kerr and Sam Tucker up front, who was excellent in his 50th game, that they'd be able to dominate that. But yeah, I would have liked to see the Scobbers come out post-bye after the really tough month that they've had and just play their best footy. It didn't quite happen, but I'm not writing them off by any stretch of the imagination.
And lads, the last game of William Buck Premier comes from Paddy's men, Fitzroy, as he mentioned a little bit earlier on. I kept a close eye on this game because they were taking on the University Blues, and they've now won back-to-back games, which is just awesome.
Another first it's been a year of first for Fitzroy, and they're on an inaugural year in Premier Men's, and they've now completed the first win, the first away win, and now back-to-back wins as well. Fantastic performance. It's been a really promising back end of the season. And joining us is Julian Turner. Julian, thanks so much for your time.
Hello, gentlemen. Thanks for having me.
Well, great to have you on. What have you made of the journey so far, this season in particular? Let's start there.
It's been really enjoyable, to be honest. Obviously, we haven't had a lot of wins. Not a lot of 4-point results, but I think we've probably been a bit more competitive than some people expected. And obviously, without watching the games, it might not look like we were, but we've had a pretty positive year, which is hard to say given the results. But I think you can have those years where you're near the bottom and like you're struggling to get people to training and everyone's sort of dragging themselves in on a Tuesday. But everyone's sort of been quite upbeat and positive throughout, and which I've been really pleased with.
The other thing I think is, we keep talking about you guys each week as being plucky and resilient. You've had a great capacity, even when you're down in games and the game sort of looks like it's out of reach. You might be 7 or 8 goals down. You fought out games incredibly well, which I think speaks volumes about the character of the group.
Yeah, I think we were happy with being plucky for the first month or so.
Yep.
And I think our supporters were happy with us being plucky. But then after, once you get to 1 and 4, 1 and 5, and you're actually competitive in those games, you start to go, okay, well, I don't want to be plucky anymore.
Which is great, isn't it? That's part of the development of a group, to not settle for that.
Yeah, 100%. And then that's when you risk guys starting to get a bit disappointed and feeling flatter once your expectations rise. But I think we've kept a pretty good balance throughout, which is a credit to the coaches especially, I reckon, to keep us all up and going, despite you can easily have big dips when you go up like that. But we've stayed pretty level, I reckon.
I love tracking Fitzroy and what we've done in particularly the last 10 weeks, Julian, and for the love of the game, and just watching them. And you talk about plucky at the start of the year. Now the results are showing. The last 2 weeks have been brilliant. You're a strong chance to stay up, not just in the relegation zone. You got University Blacks this weekend, and then Collegians who are undermanned in the final game of the year, Julian. Have you set your sights on finishing this year with 4 wins?
4 wins in a row.
Consecutive, yes, correct. Yeah.
Yeah, which would be, I think, 6 total, which would be a great result. I think we were kind of hoping that Collegians will be out of the finals race by then. But Xavier dropping a couple of games to our main rivals has been disappointing, to say the least. So, yeah, absolutely. Of course we want to win the next 2 weeks. Even if we went down with 6 wins, you can sort of hang your hat on that to a point and be relatively proud of your efforts.
And Julian, you're one of a few players who has a long history with the Fitzroy Footy Club, and it was one of the great moments when you won your first game in Premier, and you were seeing all this love and the vibe of the playing group of players who'd been there since they were about 9, 10 years old. What's it like playing for Fitzroy? And what's the playing group been like in Premier Footy, considering this is your first year at top flight?
Well, I suppose when I get asked this, it's I can't compare it to any other club because I've never been anywhere else, you know. But some of the players, like everyone says their club has a great culture and a great vibe, and but I think it is easy to compare our community and our supporter base, which is obviously unique, and we're so lucky to have it. Having played there since juniors, you're just embraced and loved. And I think the people that the recruits that we do get from other clubs or from interstate and things like that, they share those sentiments, I suppose, which is really nice to hear. And guys that do leave, which is rare, always rare until the last couple of years. It's been a bit in and out, but rarely does anyone leave with much bad blood or many negative things to say about the club, I don't think. So, yeah, obviously I love playing there. I've never thought about going anywhere else. And I never would have imagined that we'd be an A grade in the time that I was playing, to be honest. Last year was incredibly exciting, and if we could stay up and consolidate, that would be even better.
How did you end up at Fitzroy in the first place, Julian? Are you a Fitzroy local, or did you have some other ties to the club?
I grew up in Northcote. I actually played 1 year of under-9s at Alphington. And then, I don't know, me and my neighbour's mum moved us both over to Fitzroy for under-10s, I think was my first year at Fitzroy. I didn't really do Auskick, but yeah, that obviously we didn't have much of a say in that as kids, I don't reckon. I can't remember why that was, but
been there ever since.
That was just how it started, and just played through the juniors, played 19s, had maybe half a year off or a year off to travel or with a surgery here or there, but pretty much never left, and just been sort of rusted on now.
Do you have a rough idea about how many games you've played for Fitzroy since under 10s, Julian?
Juniors would have no idea. Yep. I would have no idea. But I definitely didn't get injured as much in juniors as I as I have the last few years. I've sort of been limping my way to 200 senior games. But yeah, I wouldn't be able to tell you. What do you play? 10 years of juniors and 19s is 20. Yeah, I don't know. You'd have to do the math.
Yeah, you've done 188 in the seniors. I
Okay,
can tell you that much. You're at 188. I'm just going back through because I've only got you down since you were playing in the under-19. So
well, don't forget he's a premiership player with the under-12 Greens.
Correct.
Yeah, we'll put it at an even 400. I reckon.
Must be something
let's
like
go with that.
So people always talk about, Julian, when it comes to legacies. You want to leave your club in a better position than when you arrived. What's it meant to you to be part of this journey that's elevated Fitzroy from being in the lower tiers to now being in the top tier, taking on the big boys and showing that you're good enough to compete with the best teams in the VAFA?
Yeah, it's not something I thought about a lot until Luke Marnie talked about that a little bit, especially when I first became captain as well. He used to talk a bit about, like leaving the club in a better place and you found it. And I mean, a better place doesn't always mean a higher grade or more premierships or more wins or any of those sort of things. A lot of it is, the feel of the club, the culture of the club, numbers, depth, all sorts of things like that. Like basically how much people enjoy being there, I think is how I would grade it. And I feel like I can say that, it is in a better place, especially like the women's team was introduced around the time I started playing seniors or was in 19s or maybe, yeah. And no, it would have been a couple of years after that actually, because they just had their 10-year anniversary. And I think, yeah, they've had a dramatic effect on the feel of the club and the culture. And I just can't say enough about that. And being a part of the club as it's progressed, I suppose, yeah, is something I'm really proud of. Often, like people that stay around a long time, sometimes, yeah, you might get too much credit for that sort of thing, or not enough. Like it's it's always hard to know how much of an impact you've actually had, I suppose. But being there, being here, I should say, has it'll definitely be something I'm proud of looking back.
Jace, it was one of the great thrills last year. Of course, Josh Herriott sat in your chair last year on For the Love of the Game, and we would regularly talk about collegians in William Buck Premier, but obviously St Bernard's were with Fitzroy in Premier B. And to get them in to see a final series for Fitzroy, they win the preliminary final after losing to St Bernard's, to book a spot in William Buck Premier for the first time was just incredible. And the amount of people, Julian, that turned out on grand final day, I know it wasn't the ultimate prize for you guys on the day, but the support that came down for the Roys, particularly for Luke Marnie, who had made it known that it was going to be his last game in charge of Fitzroy, it's like nothing I've seen in the Amos. And fortunately, I've seen 6 or 7 consecutive grand finals now. And obviously, St Kevin's fans turn out in big numbers. Collegians fan turned out. But the number of people that turned up for Fitzroy last year was something, again, I've never seen at local footy. Could you feel that energy going into that game?
Oh, absolutely. We can feel it and when the sun's out at a home game at Brunswick Street, like we're definitely getting ridden home by a huge number of people. Like you can feel when you come on the grandstand wing and you're chasing a ball out there, like in the last quarter, you can feel the crowd lifting you. It's an incredible feeling, and hopefully we get the same. I should have mentioned this a moment ago when I mentioned the women's club, that they're actually in the grand final. I'm not sure if you had that coming, but
yep, they're in 2 actually. 2 grand finals coming up this weekend. The Resis and the Seniors, right?
Yeah, so we should see that crowd again at Elsternwick Park, 2 o'clock on Sunday. Hopefully, a few listeners will turn up. I don't know when you publish this, but it's the crowd on grand final was amazing. It was an incredible day. Obviously, St Bernard's are too good for us, but there's nothing like it. Playing in finals is a highlight of you.
There's also nothing like Joey's ability to wedge St Bernard's into a question that gets someone to talk about how great St Bernard's were. He's the absolute best in the business at it, Julian. Let's look ahead to this weekend. First and foremost, you're taking on University Blacks, who are obviously in some good form, and they're finishing the season strongly as you are. What's on the scouting report? What are you expecting this weekend, and what have you got to do to win?
I must say this year, having moved a little bit further away from the leadership, I do a bit less of that during the week than I used to. Do
you find that helps your footy or harms it?
Look, personally, I haven't had an amazing year, but I wouldn't say it's to do with that. I've enjoyed some period. Yeah, it's in some ways it's enjoyable to have a little bit of less of that pressure and time commitment, I suppose. But in a way, I'll never really be able to turn that off, I don't think. But it's not a bad thing, you know. At least now I can sort of dip in and out a little bit, I suppose, since I'm so, like, our leadership group is really strong. Jack Hart has been amazing this year as captain. And, it's the pressure's right off me. It's just been really good. In terms of Blacks, we love playing them, not just because it's the shortest away trip probably in the comp, but we always have pretty good battles with them. Been a while since we knocked them off, I think, and got that the Rouge et Noir Cup. So we'd love to go home with that at the end of Saturday.
Looking at it mainly from your perspective then, Paddy and Joey will both be out at Brunswick Street looking forward to this game. What should they be looking for when the game's on your terms? What does it look like for you?
Fast ball movement, hopefully. Changing angles. And not sitting back, trying to get pace on the ball, especially out of half back, I reckon. And, deep. Trying to get deep entries, I reckon, to keep get the big boy Dane Harvey involved.
Paddy's second favourite player after Julian Turner, Dane Harvey.
Yeah, I was waiting for him to come up.
You know him too well.
Oh, dear.
Hey, Julian, thanks so much for your time. We really appreciate it. Congratulations, not only for this year, but for everything you've put into the Fitzroy Football Club over so many years. It's been an absolute delight to see your development and evolution this year as a team, and we wish you all the best for the last couple of weeks.
Thanks, guys. I really appreciate that. Appreciate the love that we get in these sort of the media areas and that sort of thing. We really love it. So thank you very much for your time and all your support.
Thanks, Julian. The SEN team will be out there on Saturday. Fitzroy versus Uni Blacks, 1:45, live on the SEN app and vafa.com.au. Going to be a fantastic game.
Tickets are now on sale for one of the signature events on the VAFA calendar, the William Buck VAFA Finals Luncheon, Friday, September 6 at Zinc. It's always a fantastic afternoon of entertainment as we celebrate the AFL and VAFA Final Series. And in 2024, we have former Essendon goal-kicking great Matthew Lloyd and Hawthorn Premiership player Campbell Brown locking horns once again to draw a line in the sand, have a few laughs, and preview the upcoming AFL Final Series. While Jason Bennett and Joey Pignataro will join me, Paddy Grindlay, to preview the 2024 VAFA Final Series in a live episode of For the Love of the Game. So join us for a delicious lunch and plenty of laughs as we celebrate finals footy. Head to the VAFA website to grab your tickets now. It's the William Buck VAFA Finals Luncheon, Friday, September 6. We'll see you there.
This is For the Love of the Game, the official podcast of the Amish. Great to talk to Julian Turner before the break. Let's turn our attention, lads, over to Paddy's section, Premier B. How many phone calls on Monday, Paddy?
All 10, which was good. Got through. I really appreciate, actually, especially, I think Joshy Burke, I may have got to him about 8 o'clock in the evening after pushing through all day. So Joshy is a ripper, so outstanding for him to wait around. But
So why'd you make him last then? Is there any sort of pecking order? Do the coaches sort of go, I wonder what time Paddy's ringing me to...
Con would be first.
3:30 this afternoon. Jeez, I'm back in the pecking order.
That does actually come up.
Con would be first, no doubt.
The idea, it's a very... I look at it very closely. I figure, which games do I cover off first in the article? I'll ring those two coaches, finish that element, move on to the next one. So considering how much of a procrastinator I am, so I really appreciate all the coaches for tuning in at 10 p.m. in the evening.
I like it. Given there's not a lot of close results from the weekend, how did you rank it this week?
Well, so the start off is the top four, one more round of football to play. So you've got Old Haileybury 54 points, second place DLR 52. They're locked into top two. Old Trinity are third, 46 points. Old Geelong 44 points. They're a game and 8.8% clear in fourth from Old Ivanhoe, which are fifth, 40 points. Old Campbell needed to win to stay in the finals race. They lost to Old Haileybury, so they're now done.
So bearing in mind, unlike Premier Men's, there's only one game left coming up this weekend because they didn't take the bye.
Yep. So again, we spoke about this across the weekend. It was so windy on this Saturday, and it's really affected a few of the games. The Bloods didn't quite get the start that they wanted against the Wellers, but then really responded. James Magna booted 4. They're looking really, really strong up forward. Durrus Seckle down back, I think, an interesting little narrative as we approach finals. Expect to see him continue down there. And then they've got a really nice little run of form going at the moment. Basically looking for that. They found it in that Old Geelong game that we covered at length where they just exploded. And they're going to play DLR in the 1v2 semi-final in 2 weeks' time because they took care of St Bede's Mentone in East Malvern.
Any insights as to what they're going to do this weekend? Are they playing full ball, knowing that they can't move from those two spots?
No, they're going to keep going. And this is the key element that both the squads in the top two and even in the finals, even if they can still play, they're really keen on foot to the pedal because this is something that we perhaps don't think about as much if we're thinking about AFL. You don't get the week off. You got to keep going. So you got to have that momentum push all the way through finals. If you take your foot off the pedal, you do risk falling apart. You look at the games that they've got left in Premier B, and that's probably fairly indicative of, they're not exactly easy matchups. So Old Haileybury have Old Ivanhoe, for instance, which need to win to keep its season alive. So that's going to do a fair bit for the Bloods to try and keep them moving as far as their form goes.
Speaking of Old Haileybury, our Anytime Fitness Rising Star nominee this week is from Old Haileybury. It's Noah Higgins.
Yeah.
20-year-old who came up through the Williamstown juniors system, played 17 games for the Western Jets in 21-22, while also playing 4 games for Old Haileybury's under-19s team a couple of years ago. Then 9 reserves games for Old Haileybury last season, and he's really come of age in 2024. 16 games, he's polled in 6 of them, including a best-on-ground performance in the Bloods win over Old Camberwell on the weekend. So exactly the pathway that you want, Joey. You get them into the under-19s, give them a taste, then they spend a season playing in the reserves. This year he's come of age, come up to the senior side, 20 years of age now, and they've got themselves a player.
I like that. The following that process is something that it ticks a box for me. There are some kids who are obviously outstanding at under 19, go straight into the seniors and have an impact. Lukey went to one of those, for example.
Yes. Yep.
And this sets a great base. If Old Haileybury now can go up to Premier Men's next year, Noah's now got a year of senior footy under his belt, and he's primed and ready to go at the top flight, which is great for him.
Before we go to Premier C, is it Caulfield and St Bede's? Are they going down?
It does feel that way. You just don't feel that Caulfield tried their guts out over Old Ivanhoe, but they couldn't get the job done, and it just fell away a little bit late. It's really good that you're in this situation where Old Camberwell and Old Ivanhoe, after coming up from Premier C, they could both win 10 games this year, which is an outstanding leap. I know we've mentioned it ad nauseum, Joey, about that jump from C to B. It is so difficult to maintain. The other one I want to touch on just quickly is Old Trinity. They've sealed a place in finals for the first postseason since 2018, had a really tough year last year, and I think that's the message that Donald McDonald just wants to sort of forward to his club, that they've got finals ahead, but let's just take a moment and realise how far they've come since last year. That run from the CYs just comes to an end, but they've got a really exciting young guy called Harry Miller, who's a 19-year-old small forward. He's kicked 11 goals in his last 3 weeks of senior football. Really entertaining game, this, by the way. 33 goals kicked, and in the end it was the T's 120 to Williamstown CYMS 97. So one of the hot teams in the competition, the CYs. So Donald McDonald very aware of that in that win. And the CYs, again, they're going to be running up this year strongly. They can't go down now. We thought they would for most of this season, but they promised themselves basically that they'd aim for 6 wins. They're on 5 right now, plus the draw. They want to get number 6.
And before we leave Premier B and take a break, Yasmin Budic is our other Anytime Fitness Rising Star nominee from La Trobe University, playing Division 3 Women's. 19-year-old from Rutherglen, came up through the Murray Feline system, playing senior footy in 2022 and 2023 up there. She also played some Coates League with the Murray Bushrangers for a couple of seasons. Joined La Trobe Uni this year. She's had an immediate impact. She's played 18 games. She's polled in 10 of them on their way to this weekend's grand final against Therry Panola. So congratulations to our 2 Anytime Fitness Rising Star nominees, Noah Higgins and Yasmin Budic.
Let's head over to Premier C now, lads. 1 week to go, just like Premier B. Ajax comfortably 89-point winners over Oakley. Marcelin beat Pegs. Old Carey beat Parkdale. Mazenod over Monash, and the Hampton Rovers beat Glenira McKinnon. Now, Paddy, if you just bring up the ladder for me in Premier C men's and just tell myself, as well as the listeners out there, what are we looking at when it comes to the top 4?
So it's a bit of the wildcard VFL thing, isn't it? It's that sort of pre-elimination final. So you've got Old Carey, 60 points in first. Ajax, 60 points in second. Hampton Rovers, 60 points in third. And then you look at the game to come here, which will essentially decide this 1v2 semi-final, because you've got Old Carey hosting Ajax 2 p.m. Saturday afternoon. So 1v2, and then Hampton is sitting there. They're playing Oakley, who are last on the ladder. Mm-hmm. So if this game, it doesn't even matter if it's a draw, right? So whoever loses the Old Carey Ajax game is in danger of going into third and playing the cutthroat semi, should Hampton, as we expect they will, beat Oakley, who have won 1 game this season. Just an incredible way for the season to finish. It's that taste of September before September really starts, the day before September starts. I don't know who you'd rather be at the moment, Old Carey or Ajax. You'd feel that Old Carey, considering they're going to host this game, will be feeling fairly strongly, but the 89-point win tune-up for Ajax, they're going to be feeling pretty good about themselves.
So the winner essentially will finish on top of the ladder, and then Hampton...
And then Hampton bob up to play the 1v2 semi.
Double chance for the Rovers, and then potentially we could see in 2 weeks' time Old Carey play against Ajax in a prelim final that could potentially play Hampton in the grand final.
Unbelievable. So just outstanding scheduling for round 18 that's going to set us up for this. Ton Watch,
yes.
How are we looking?
I'm telling you now, and I've told you this the whole way through. Mitch Brown is now on 78 goals for the year with 1 home and away game to go. Unless he's kicking 22 goals against Pegs this week.
He's got, what's that, 3 games left?
he would have to play 4 games because they've got round 18, and Parkdale would have to play all 3 finals.
No, he can kick 22 and 3. I'm confident.
He would have to kick 22 this weekend.
No.
To get it in the season.
No, the finals count. They'll still storm the field.
Well, Parkdale won't be there.
I'll be there to storm the field.
You'll be the only one there because I don't think Parkdale will go past the first week given the dominance of the top 3 teams. So they're going to be playing finals. We know that. They're going to have at least one final. But then it's all to do in that final.
This September is where Mitch Brown plays his best footy. This is team on the back stuff, Western Bulldog style, from the unlikely position and kick the ton along the way and rub it in your face, Joey Pignataro.
Oh, okay. Well, at this stage, I'm vindicated, but we'll see how we go with one home and away game remaining. But hey, before we take a break and look at the other grand finals, as well as give our tips in the divisions up to the first weekend of finals this weekend, which is very, very exciting. Division 1 men's, Paran will take on Parkside in the qualifying final, and Ormond will take on UHSVU in a knockout final. Now, Braden May, who's not with us over the next couple of weeks, Paralympics for Braden.
Yes.
Good on it.
Go Braden.
Got a flight to Paris.
Hello.
After he's around the grounds work here with us at the Amos.
Put it straight in his tape.
That's a big game, the Ormond UHS game. A couple of lean years for the Monders. So to have them back in finals, I know it is in the divisions, but that is a great turnaround for the players out at EE Gun Reserve. Paran, they've been nomads this year, Paddy.
Yeah, they have a little bit, but I like how this ladder has ended up because you do have them. So they've got three game advantage on first. So you'd think that they should be able to push through to the grand final. I really like this 3v4 though because you've got 2 teams both on 48 points. Pretty close with percentage, only the 8% after the end of the home and away season. So really looking forward to a cracking final series. But you'd think that Paran, surely they push their way through, don't you, Joe?
What you're about to learn is that nothing is a given.
Exactly.
When it comes to the finals and it doesn't matter how many games you win the home and away season, you're about to find out that if it's not in Division 1, it may be in Division 2 where we find an upset in the finals where Brunswick will host Elsternwick for a spot in the grand final. Of course, the qualifying final, when it does come to this one, you will earn promotion to your above section as well as a spot in the grand final. So Brunswick, Elsternwick in Division 2. South Melbourne will take on Whitefriars in the knockout final. Braden did talk to us about the Friars a couple of weeks ago.
Well, this is the key thing. So Brunswick lost this weekend just gone to South Melbourne Districts by 16 points. And it's this third quarter where South Melbourne Districts have booted 11 goals to none, which you would think is a considerably windy game of footy. But so the Friars, let's just note this. So Bulleen Templestowe haven't had the greatest of years, but a 116-point victory to tune yourself up for finals, and they've looked really good of late. And then you sort of look at Elsternwick as well, getting over the line over at Wattle Park AFC by 12 points in a high-scoring contest. So you feel that all the clubs have tuned up for finals pretty well. There's either been really good performances or there's been close, contested, tight games of footy against competitive teams in the case of Brunswick, South Melbourne Districts and Elsternwick with that game against Wattle Park. So, that Brunswick-Elsternwick game is going to be super interesting. I feel very strongly about Brunswick here, though. They've got that 10-point advantage on the ladder, but also so much of these divisional games are made up. You can see the percentage gaps, which I feel is really indicative. They've got 40% on Elsternwick. South Melbourne Districts with 122% and Whitefriars 125%, just the draw separating those two teams.
So we move over to the last section now, Paddy, in the top 5 in Division 3. So North Brunswick have a week off and they'll be waiting to see who they'll be taking on next week. But in the qualifying final, the first one, St John's will take on Powerhouse. So one of those teams will have a double chance. Then Canterbury will take on Richmond in the last of the knockout finals for the men's sections of the competition.
Yeah, thrilling stuff. The Richmond Central game you'd be a little bit concerned about, I think, after getting done by 110 points the week beforehand by North Brunswick, with who have that week off. I'm interested in your thoughts here. Does the week off tend to help teams or hinder them?
It's few and far between the week off. But at this point, you will get a week off, obviously, going into a grand final. But I don't know a hell of a lot of teams who have had this luxury because we don't often have five teams play in a final series. I think we might have had it in Premier C a couple of years ago where we had a team have a week off. It may have even been Monash who ended up winning the grand final, so it probably benefited them. But it is interesting because then your subconscious always goes to, well, I've just seen a team do a number on, for example, if we use this week, North Brunswick, say they're going to play St John's. And you go, okay, Powerhouse clearly won that game of footy comfortably, so they're through. So I'm going to go for St John's, even though I've just seen them play against North Brunswick.
I've got time watch again for you here with Matthew Carnelli, who booted another 11. He's got 72 from his 11 games this year for St John's. So, again, finals, really important. Could be seeing a little 28 goal postseason from Matty Carnelli. No,
He's
not on board.
finished the year
Not on
with
board?
72 goals.
Is there football being played in the next few weeks in this division, Joey?
Yes.
Has his year finished?
No, the home and away season is. And he's not going to kick 28 goals in the finals. I can tell you that right here, right now. We're going to take a break on For the Love of the Game. When we come back, I'll give you my world-famous tips, and I'm promising you there's going to be a little shock when it comes to William Buck Premier Men's. Any fitness, any ability, any goal, with 24/7 access to over 560 clubs around Australia. At Anytime Fitness, you will find your fit. Search Anytime Fitness today. This is For the Love of the Game, the official podcast of the Amos. We're just about to get into the world-famous tips for the second last weekend of the season. But Jace, as we have been outlining for the last couple of weeks, grand finals have been happening around the competition.
5 grand finals last weekend. Congratulations to everyone who won those. The Premier Thirds, Division 1, Thirds Division 2 North, Thirds Division 2 South and Thirds Division 3 South. So fantastic to and congratulations to all the teams that won that. This Sunday is a big grand final day. We've got 6 grand finals. I've gone through and had a bit of a look at the backstory in all of these, and they all look fantastic. Look, we're going to start with Division 3 Women's. Therry Penola versus La Trobe University, Waverley Oval at 2:50 on Sunday. Now, Therry Penola finished first, 15-1. They lost 1 game for the season. They're on a 16-game winning streak. They play La Trobe, who are second, so it's the top 2 teams in the competition. Therry Penola beat La Trobe in the second semi by 25 points, and then La Trobe beat De La Salle in the prelim last week by 13 points. So Therry Penola has beaten La Trobe 3 times this year, 89-24, 35-8, and then 38-13 in the semi. So La Trobe getting a little bit closer each time, but Therry Penola will obviously start favourites in that one. Division 2 women's rather. Glenira Old McKinnon versus Hampton Rovers.
Oh, the Peacocks team.
Glenira Old McKinnon finished first, 15-1. They're on a 12-game winning streak. Hampton finished fourth, 11-4-1. They came from the fourth. They're the fourth seed. They defeated Powerhouse in the elimination final, then knocked off Whitefriars in the prelim final. I mentioned the 12-game winning streak for Glenira Old McKinnon. It goes all the way back to round 5. Guess who they lost to?
Hampton Rovers.
Hampton Rovers. 37-18, and they held them goalless until early in the third quarter.
I think I mentioned just before you go on, Jace, last week on Inside the Boundary, which I encourage anyone to go back and listen to because Tommy Purcell, wonderful chat. Hampton have had some heartbreak in finals over the last couple of years, so they'll be keen for redemption in this game.
And since that loss to the Hampton Rovers back in round 5, Glenira Old McKinnon have been demolishing teams, putting them to the sword, except again for Rovers in round 16. It was a 3-point thriller.
Ooh.
And Glenira Old McKinnon kicked 5 points in the last quarter and almost lost it. So that's twice now against Hampton. They've had terribly inaccurate performances. Feels like they can't afford to have a third one this weekend, or there might be an upset on the cards, and Hampton Rovers could come from fourth to win the flag. So that's Division 2 Women's. It's coming up on Sunday, Elstonwick Park at 9:20 as part of a triple header at Elstonwick Park. Division 1 Women's, Old Brighton and Marcelin. Old Brighton, again, dominant. This is first versus second. 15-1. Their one loss? Marcelin. 23 points just 3 weeks ago. They were 14-zip until then. So Marcelin got the job done, and then they meet for a 4th time in the second semi-final, and Old Brighton put them to the sword that day, won by 44 points. Marcelin then bounced back last week, defeated Parkdale in the prelim final. So this will be the 5th time these two teams have played each other this year, just the way the fixturings work. So Old Brighton will go in favourites by virtue of winning by 44 points just a couple of weeks ago in the second semi. So that's Division 1 Women's. Old Brighton, Marcelin, Box Hill City Oval, 2:10 on Sunday. Premier B now we get to. So it's Premier B Women's for Resis and Seniors, both of which involve Fitzroy. So it's a Fitzroy double header. We'll start with the Resis, Fitzroy and Westbourne. Fitzroy finished first, 14-2. They had 2 losses. Old Zabs in the final round, a little bit of a stumble right before the finals, but then they belted Old Zabs the following week. So they lost in the final round by 22, belted Old Zabs by 55 in the second semi-final.
That's a sandbag, isn't it?
How's that for a turnaround in a week? The other loss for Fitzroy? Westbourne, the team they're playing in the grand final. They lost by 27 points in round 1. Westbourne actually had to forfeit their other meeting in round 7, so they've only played once this year, and Westbourne won it. Right. So Westbourne defeated St Bede's Mentone in the first semi, then upset Old Zabs by 16 points last week. coming from 5 points down at three-quarter time, kicked 3 goals in the last quarter to win it. So Fitzroy and Westbourne in the Premier B Women's Reserves, which is at 11:40 at Elstonwick Park. So part 2 of that triple header on Sunday. And then part 3 of it will be the Premier Women's Seniors, which is Old Geelong and Fitzroy. Old Geelong finished second. They were 13-3. Fitzroy finished third, 11-5. So minor premiers were Willie CYMS, who went a perfect 16-0 in the home and away season and then bowed out in straight sets. They lost to Ogs by 18 points in the second semi, and then Fitzroy beat them by 2 points in the prelim final after Fitzroy had been held scoreless in the opening term. Obviously, it was that wild, crazy weather on Sunday. And then CYMS obviously were kicking into the win in the last quarter, so they were held scoreless. So they've met twice this season, Old Geelong and Fitzroy. 5-point game in round 2, Old Geelong won it. And then a 1-point game in round 11, Old Geelong won it after the Royals led by 4 points at three-quarter time. So very little between them. There's going to be some fantastic grand finals this weekend. All 6 of them, all with great backstories.
I'm just looking at that CY's Fitzroy prelim. There was 1 point scored into the wind for the game, considering how windy it was down there. I think you were about to get blown off your commentary position.
Incorrect. Well, I was down at Williamstown, which is windy at the best of times. That was a particularly windy day down at Point Gellibrand. So, it's fantastic. So best of luck to all those teams. A triple header, as I mentioned, at Elstonwick Park from 9:20 on Sunday morning. And you've got Therry Penola versus Latrobe at Waverley from 2:50. You've got Old Brighton and Marsland at Box Hill 2:10, and then Old Zabs and Old Ivanhoe at Whitefriars at 2:10 as well. So 6 grand finals. Best of luck to everyone involved.
Fantastic.
Geez, that'd be a good weekend for Fitzroy, wouldn't it? If the men win on the Saturday to
the double grand final,
to at least bounce almost out of the relegation zone into a double grand final.
Should we talk tips?
I'm going to tip Old Geelong for what it's worth, by the way, in that Premier B Women's Grand Final. Is that what we're doing?
I was thinking more Premier Men's.
Oh, right. Well, I got 5 last week.
You did, yes.
I think I did.
Well, you're a chance because St Bernard's won, so that's something. Let's go through these massive games in Premier Men's this weekend, the second last weekend. We'll start with Fitzroy versus Uni Blacks, which is our SEN game from 1:45 on the SEN app and vafa.com.au. Fitzroy versus the Blacks at Brunswick Street.
Fitzroy to win.
Who's calling this game of footy?
You two and Josh Herriott.
Josh Herriott with us.
Correct.
This weekend.
There you go.
Speaking of Josh Herriott, before I give my tip, who was in charge of the promotional post from the VAFA socials earlier on this week?
Josh Herriott.
Was it?
No, it wasn't, but I know where you're going with this.
His younger brother, Louis, is the face of that post.
The face of the VAFA.
Of the under-19 finals fixtures. Bloody hell. Louis is the best player in the family, by the way. Josh is the worst. Well, actually, no, he's not. He's not. Sammy's the worst.
Incidentally, speaking of that, our KTV, we've got a double header on Sunday.
Oh.
The under-19 premiers, the 2 semi-finals. So the first semi will be from 9:15. Both these games are at Box Hill, actually, back-to-back.
Oh, fantastic.
So Sunday morning from 9:15, under-19s premiers. First semi is Old Scotch versus Uni Blues. The second semi straight after, Old Brighton versus St Kevin's. So if you can't get to Box Hill on Sunday, you can watch the under-19 premiers double-header semi-final from 9:15.
There'll be high-quality sides as well.
I'm going to tip Fitzroy in our game, by the way. Yep. But just on that, we might talk about this next week or in the next couple of weeks. That is outstanding when it comes to Premier, given you've got the top 3 in Premier with their under-19s, which is where the breeding ground of the next generation comes from. That's awesome to see. So definitely I would encourage anyone to subscribe and watch those games on Sunday.
So Fitzroy Uni Blacks is our SEN game this Saturday. Our KTV doubleheader from 11:35, Resi's into seniors, is Old Brighton versus Old Zabs down at Brighton Beach Oval. Who do you like?
I'm going Brighton.
Yeah, so am I. Hard to tip at home, aren't they?
Old Scotch Collegians at Camberwell.
Scotch.
St Kevin's, St Bernard's at TH King.
I did say at the very start I think St Kevin's will win this game, and I don't think I can go past that.
I think he may have just tipped against St Bernard's, Jason. I'm not quite sure if you heard what I heard.
We'll have to go back and check the tape. Yeah. Uni Blues versus Old Melburnians at
St
Melbourne
Kevin's
Uni.
for me, by the way. Uni Blues by 3 points at home.
3 points? I'm going for Old Melburnians.
There we go. So one of us can't get 5.
No, we'll still get 5. Don't worry about that. We'll still get 5. We'll have a footy in each camp at some point.
You'll change the tip halfway
It's
through.
called mind games, by the way, lads.
I know.
Because someone at St Bernard's will hear what I just said. Cut it up.
Oh, the reverse moz.
Stick it on the whiteboard at TH King Oval and St Bernard's will win.
I do think my head's on a few dartboards across the Premier B competition, by the way, which we'll get to in just a second.
Right now, good
all
segue.
10.
Let's do our Premier B tips. We'll start off with Beau Morris versus Old Trinity, 2 p.m, St Banks and Baxi Reserve.
Old Trinity for all the reasons I mentioned earlier.
I like the green and gold.
Old Haileybury, Old Ivanhoe, 2 o'clock at Haileybury College at Keysborough.
Old Haileybury at the College. They were outstanding there against the Ogs a couple of weeks ago to lock in top spot.
Same for me.
St Bede's Mentone versus Willie CYMS at Mentone, 2 p.m.
Cons men, CYs to win away.
Same for me.
Come on, Joey.
D-La versus Old Geelong, 2 p.m. Waverley Oval.
D-La.
Old Geelong.
There it is.
And the final game of the weekend, 2:50, which is why we give the
2:50,
times. See, Peacock, that's why we mention the times.
You have to give the times. People could have got there early. They would have been waiting for nothing.
And they would have blamed us.
2:50,
Rightly
Glen
so.
Huntley Park, Caulfield Grammarians, Old Camberwell.
Actually, it wouldn't have mattered if they were 250. Could have gone over the road and had a punt on the quaddie while they were waiting. I'm going for Old Camberwell.
As am I. Old Camberwell to win.
That's it?
That
All
is it.
done?
Fantastic.
Do you reckon Jace is going to give us a tip ever, by the way?
I doubt it.
Because I asked him for a tip in the VFL and he gave us nothing.
No, he splinters.
Yeah.
Splinters. And it's been splinters. I think you probably should get that checked at some point because when you do leave splinters in your backside all season, it turns a bit gangrenous.
Can you give us a tip for this weekend?
Yes, it's time to go.
Not yet.
Best of luck to everyone who's playing in the grand final this week.
I'm going to fade him down. You'll be covering, by the way, if you do want to listen to Jason Bennett, on a Saturday, Werribee are taking on Geelong.
You got the double header.
And you're rolling into...
I've got 4 games
Box
this
Day.
weekend.
Oh, of course,
AFLW kicks off.
AFLW, Sydney Collingwood on Friday night into the
Collingwood will win that.
Tigers,
VFL
Eagles.
doubleheader, Werribee Geelong into Box Hill Williamstown. So 6 straight hours of live VFL finals from midday on Saturday. And then Sunday I've got the AFLW Grand Final rematch, Brisbane and North Melbourne.
That should be a cracking
killadilla
game.
in your words, Joey.
Killadilla, yes. And can you find another celebrity to watch the VFL and you tweet it out for me? I love when you do that.
I did enjoy the fact that I was able to get Josh Giddy's
was
time
good.
at the
That was
Yarraville Seton
outstanding.
Eagles.
That was very good.
outstanding.
Yes. He was a gun footy player, Josh.
You've-
It's a real shame.
You've set
He's
the
got
bar
a
high
basketball
now
background.
for the final series. We are done. That's officially it.
He's got a basketball foreground.
Point guard for the Chicago Bulls. Michael Jordan was watching on at Frankston as well. Did you see that?
Did I? No, I didn't catch up with that one.
No, it was, just the Chicago Bulls. They just love their VFL.
Well, he'll be watching on again this weekend because they're playing
number 1 ticket holder.
at Southport. We're done. Listen to the VFL podcast for all that stuff. We're back next week. Who's on that game? Oh, one of us. See you next week.